Hello, my name is Sharon Smith, and this is my introduction video for EDL 850. It's nice to meet you guys. I'm going to start with talking a little bit about me and my demographic. So, my name is Sharon Smith, and I'm from Costa Rica. I was born there. I went to school there about 50% of the time, and I went to school here about 50% of the other time. I currently live in Shawnee Mission, Kansas. It's the community I live in is a suburban community, and as part of the KC Metro, I do work in an urban school community called Argentine Middle School. I'm an ELA teacher. Argentine is an urban middle school in Kansas City, Kansas Public School District. My demographic is 87% diverse, 67% Hispanic, and 98% free and reduced lunch. My students do wear school uniforms, and they do have this building right down here. This is the Argentine Middle School building. For my community in this area, you see a lot of artwork like this. A lot of it is part of the neighborhood community cleanup, where they go through and they touch up graffitied walls with stuff that's more artistic. So this is my transitioning slide for the level 3 of government control. And I'm going to jump right into that because the first piece that I decided to focus on was the local government. And the question that was asked was, what kind of supports do public schools receive at the following level of government? And so primarily school boards ask communities to contribute school funding through property tax, and that's in line with the school boards are responsible for funding the rest of their budgets. So I'm going to say that the local government funds a little bit over 50%, and they do this by collecting property taxes on all of their homes and businesses within the district. And so obviously school funding would be one of my bullets, and curriculum development is another thing that local government is responsible for, and school improvement plans also. So for the sake of this project, I did decide to investigate my own school district, Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools, and I found that the KCKPS is a district that collects funding through property tax. So they call it local option budget. So it's the local option budget is money raised through locally approved taxes to go to local school districts where those taxes are collected. So who's in charge regarding education on a federal level, local level, and state level? So I'm going to start with the federal level. So the federal government has the least amount of control, in my opinion. Betsy DeVoe is the Department of Education head and promotes plans that have to move through the House and Senate. At the state level, we have a governor who holds the most power, in my opinion, and this person delegates responsibilities of the day-to-day decisions to the local school board and district, but maintains that power if she needs to use it. Our local governor is Laura Kelly, and so I would say, well, our local governor is Laura Kelly, but our local government decides on curriculum improvement plans, where funding will be placed on a smaller scale, things like that. So for the Kansas City Public School District, it's run by our superintendent, Dr. Charles Faust, and 7 board members who their duties are to create the annual budget, and all of the above members are paid and appointed. The superintendent, Dr. Charles Faust, has the most power at this level because basically he oversees everything that happens through the board and in each individual school. Governor Laura Kelly and the Kansas House and Senate are in charge of financially supporting the Kansas school system to their degree. Her duties are to push and advocate for the best interests of the Kansas students in Kansas. She is paid and elected by the Kansas communities. She has the most power, but she typically delegates that to a local school board, to the local school boards. So one of the questions was also, what kind of supports do public schools receive at a state level government? So states give slightly less than 50% of the financial school budget. The officials like Governor Kelly advocate on behalf of the schools in her state and collect money for schools through sales tax and income taxes, so more taxes. One last piece that I thought was very interesting is that there are 42 states and the District of Columbia. They also gather their school funding through state-run lotteries, and that was something we read in our articles, which I thought was super interesting. Okay, so state government, we're still in state government. Another thing that I didn't mention yet was the Common Core standards. Our state government provides the Common Core standards so that our local government, school boards, schools, and admin they follow that. And that's in the best interest of our students. Okay, so I learned that schools really only receive about 8 to 10% of their funding from the federal government, and much of this funding is attached to testing and performance requirements. Two of the very important quotes that I found from our articles were that yes, we do receive government funding, but this funding is not only from the Department of Education, but also from the Department of Health and Human Services and from the Department of Agriculture for school lunches, which I thought was useful. Also, Title I schools are funded and established, but also require higher accountabilities. And so these schools have specific penalties if the schools were to consistently perform at a lower level. And so that affects them when it comes to school funding. On a different note, the federal government also supports schools by putting acts and amendments in place to support equity in schools. And so the federal government supports public schools through initiating constitutional provisions for minority students and staff. These provisions are often put in place to support equity in schools. So which of the three levels of government have the most influence over these NS number 6 components? So I did look this up, the NELP program standards. Those are totally new to me. I've never used the NELP or heard of them, so this is my first class where I'll be utilizing those. So the NELP program standards in this case are for building level leaders. However, I feel like, yes, I did say that the component 6.1 is more lean towards a local level because it says program completers understand and demonstrate the capacity to evaluate, develop, and implement management, communication, technology, and school level governance and operation systems. That speaks to me on a local level. For the component 6.2, I definitely said it was state or local. And I felt this way because program completers understand and demonstrate the capacity to evaluate, develop, and advocate for a data-informed and equitable resource plan. I feel like developing resource plans and collecting data is definitely state and local, definitely not federal. So I did say that the component 6.3 was either state or federal, depending on how you look at it. So it says program completers understand and demonstrate the capacity to reflectively evaluate, communicate about, and implement laws, rights, policies, and regulations to promote student and adult success and well-being. So when it talked about implementing laws, rights, policies, and regulations, that definitely felt very federal and state. Because we don't really initiate laws on a local level. So how does all of this support the educational success and well-being of each student and adult on each level of government? Well, I think the federal government supports the educational success and well-being of each student and adult because the actions taken via amendments and acts have gone a long ways in creating equity and inclusion in schools. For example, we have the Individuals with Disability Education Act, so IDEA, and the landmark Brown versus Board of Education. And so I felt like those definitely increased equity and inclusion in schools, and they were a necessary element that needed to be implemented at that federal level. So as for states, working to balance state funding in a more equal way also increases equity in students. I said that the state level, people advocate for more equal funding, collect school funding through income and sales tax, and delegate responsibilities to local levels if you're at the state area. So locally, I feel like they have the largest impact because our boards and superintendents distribute funds. They collect funding through property tax, they collect state funding, and they include community partners in helping fund school events and needed items and other supports. And they also develop learning plans and curriculums to enforce at a local level with our teachers and other admin. So that's it. This is my reference page, and I hope we all have a really great semester, and it's very nice to meet you guys. Thank you.